Ask most Americans to name a few legendary lawmen from the 19th century, and you'll likely hear names like Wild Bill Hickok, Bat Masterson, and Wyatt Earp. These iconic figures symbolize the brave lawmen who brought order to the untamed frontier with their six-shooters and badges. For nearly a century, Hollywood has celebrated these fearless peacekeepers, often blurring the line between fact and fiction. When asked about the most notorious Western towns, many would mention Dodge City, Tombstone, or Deadwood. Thanks to movies and dime novels before them, these old cattle and mining towns conjure up images of gunslingers, rowdy cowboys, gamblers, and the tough sheriff or marshal who kept them in line. However, there were plenty of other wild towns and bold lawmen beyond the ones that most often come to mind. In the latter part of the 19th century, Idaho Territory had its own share of unruly towns. Mining hubs like Idaho City and Silver City rivaled the likes of Deadwood and Tombstone not just for the wealth of ore they produced, but also for the tough characters they attracted. While Wyatt Earp and his brothers made their mark in the Arizona desert, another fearless lawman was taking on outlaws in Idaho. His name was Orlando Rube Robbins. Robbins was born in Maine on August 30th, 1836. As a teenager, he took great pride in a pair of oxen he owned, using them for work on his family's farm and occasionally renting them out to neighbors for extra income. At age 17, when his father sold the oxen without consulting him, Robbins, furious, decided to leave home and never look back. Robbins eventually ended up in the California mining camps nestled in the Sierra Nevada foothills. At 25, he was drawn to the gold strikes along Idaho's Clearwater River and Florence Basin, near what's now Riggins, Idaho. In August 1863, Robbins moved again, this time to the new diggings in the Boise Basin, around 20 miles northeast of present-day Boise. When Robbins arrived, the Boise Basin gold rush had just been going for a year and was drawing the largest number of miners since the heyday of California's mother lode. Several mining camps, soon to become small towns, sprang up with names like Placerville, Centerville, and West Bannock. Robbins moved to West Bannock, the town in the area with the greatest rate of population growth, with almost 6,100 residents. Recognizing its importance as the largest settlement in the Pacific Northwest, the territorial legislature soon renamed it Idaho City. When Robbins settled in the bustling town, it already featured a hospital, theater, 2 bowling alleys, 4 sawmills, a mattress factory, 9 restaurants, 2 churches, 4 breweries, and 25 saloons, all established within its first year. The town also counted 15 doctors and over 24 lawyers among its residents. However, more than medical professionals and attorneys, Idaho City was in dire need of law and order, and Rube Robbins stepped up to fill that role. In 1864, he took on the position of deputy sheriff. With the Civil War raging back east, Boise Basin's miners were sharply divided between Union and Confederate loyalties. Fueled by whiskey, these rival factions often settled their differences with fists, knives, and sometimes even firearms. It fell to Robbins to restore order, frequently locking up drunken troublemakers who threatened to brawl or shoot to prove their political beliefs to equally inebriated opponents, each convinced that their cause had divine backing. One July, word spread that the town's southern faction was determined to prevent any Yankee from singing "The Star-Spangled Banner" on Independence Day. When Robbins caught wind of this, he was furious. A staunch Union supporter, he wasn't about to let a group of rebel sympathizers silence him. On the 4th of July, Robbins walked into a saloon packed with Southern supporters. Ignoring the rowdy cheers for Jefferson Davis and the Confederate cause, he strode over to a billiard table, climbed onto the green felt, and drew his revolvers. The room went dead silent as everyone took in the sight of his cap and ball pistols. "Oh, say, can you see by the early light of morning?" Robbins questioned in a baritone voice that cut through the tension. "What we so boldly cried forth at the final flicker of dusk." While he sang, he darted anyone to cut him off with his eyes fixed on the audience, but not a single soul dared move. Over the dwelling of the brave people in the country of the free? Robbins gently holstered his weapons and rose from the table, his gaze still focused on the throng. His song was replaced with a thick hush. Ignoring the glares from the bystanders, he forced his way through the room and out the front door onto the street. Not a single Southerner dared to stop him, Robbins's fame soon earned him a new job in Boise, where he first started as a deputy sheriff and later worked as a U.S. Marshal. In late February 1868, miners at the Golden Chariot mine near Silver City, a booming town in the Owyhee Mountains, about 60 miles southwest of Boise, dug into a shaft belonging to the Ida Elmore mine. For weeks, the two sides exchanged heated words, each accusing the other of digging beyond their rightful claims. Tensions flared on March 25th when a group of armed miners from the Golden Chariot mine broke into the Ida Elmore shaft. What began as a small skirmish quickly escalated into a full-blown gunfight, with around 100 men taking part in what became known as the Owyhee War. For 3 days, the two opposing groups exchanged gunfire underground, sending so much lead into the Ida Elmore's support beams that the mine was on the brink of caving in. When word of the skirmish reached the territorial governor of Idaho, he issued a directive demanding both sides end their conflict and take their dispute to court. The task of delivering this message and enforcing a ceasefire fell to Orlando Rube Robbins. Despite roads heavy with spring rain and mountain snowmelt, Robbins covered the 60-mile journey from Boise to Silver City in just 6 hours, riding at an impressive 10 miles per hour. Upon arriving, he quickly gathered the leaders of both factions and read them the governor's order. He likely made it clear that he would personally see to it that the decree was enforced. Given his formidable reputation, the owners of the Golden Chariot and Ida Elmore mines took him at his word. They pulled back their armed men, redrew the boundaries of their claims, and never saw the inside of a courtroom. Robbins had resolved the conflict in a single day. Handling rowdy drunks and settling disputes weren't the only skills Robbins mastered. He was also a natural at catching outlaws. After 6 robbers robbed the Silver City stage in Boise in February 1876, Robbins had them imprisoned in 2 days. Apart from being a law enforcement official, Robbins also held the position of colonel in the territorial militia, where he oversaw the scouts. During Idaho's Camas War in the late 1870s, he and his unit joined a larger U.S. Army force in tracking a group of Bannock and Paiute warriors, led by Paiute Chief Egan, into the rugged Owyhee region southwest of Silver City, near the Idaho-Oregon border. For almost 2 weeks, the Army pursued the group across the high desert, sometimes covering up to 50 miles a day. In late June 1887, as described by a militia eyewitness, Colonel Robbins and 4 of his men were riding over a ridge when they were ambushed by a group of Bannock warriors, including Chief Egan. Outnumbered, the scouts urged their horses into a gallop, trying to reach the safety of the Army lines. The Bannocks gave chase, firing as they rode. Just as it seemed the militiamen might make it out unharmed, a scout named Bill Myers was wounded, and his horse was shot down. Hearing Myers' cry for help, Robbins quickly turned around to assist him. As Robbins raced toward the fallen scout, Chief Egan pushed his horse to intercept them. The 2 men recognized one another as they got closer, and their will to fight was sparked. Charging at one another, Robbins and Egan exchanged fire from their Winchesters, reminiscent of medieval knights clashing with swords and maces on a battlefield. The 2 warriors, their rifles now empty, switched to their pistols. Robbins, steady atop his horse, fired his revolver without flinching, despite bullets ripping through his clothes and grazing his finger. Chief Egan wasn't far behind, using his horse as a shield to avoid Robbins's shots. Then, one of Robbins's bullets struck true, hitting Egan's wrist and knocking him to the ground. Still determined, Egan quickly stood, ready to continue the fight. But before Robbins could get off another shot, Trooper Myers managed to fire and hit Egan in the chest. With the chief gravely wounded and left in the care of his fellow tribesmen, Robbins helped Myers onto his own horse, and the 2 made their escape. 7 weeks later, Robbins once again proved his steady nerves. Along with 2 cavalrymen, a bugler, and an Army lieutenant named W.R. Parnell, he was rowing across the Snake River when a horse they had tied to the boat suddenly became frightened. As the soldiers tried to calm the animal, it jolted the boat, sending everyone into the river. While Lieutenant Parnell and the bugler drifted with the current, Robbins helped one of the cavalrymen onto the overturned boat. The other cavalryman managed to grab hold of the horse's tail, which pulled him safely to shore. Spotting the bugler struggling, Robbins left the overturned boat and swam to assist. After guiding the bugler to the shallows, he noticed the lieutenant was also in trouble, starting to sink. Robbins jumped back into the river without thinking, reaching Parnell just as he was going to drown and saving him until another boat could come to their aid. Throughout the 1880s and 90s, Robbins remained relentless in tracking down outlaws across southern Idaho. In August 1882, just shy of turning 46, he captured the outlaw Charlie Chambers after covering an impressive 1,280 miles in only 13 days. For any criminal with Robbins on their trail, it was as good as being already locked up. Unlike many of the lawmen of his time, Robbins had interests beyond gunfights and high-stakes pursuits. In his 30s, he became a devout Christian and joined the temperance movement. After his baptism in the Boise River, he was chosen as president of the Methodist Church Sunday School. In addition, he was appointed as the territorial legislature of Idaho's sergeant-at-arms after serving a term in that body. Even in his late 60s, Robbins worked as a guard transporting prisoners to the Idaho State Penitentiary. Despite often escorting men who were a third of his age, he never let a single one slip away. On May 1, 1908, Orlando Rube Robbins, a well-known lawman in Idaho, died after a heart attack. At his funeral, many dignitaries paid their respects, each trying to capture the essence of the man. Yet none of their words matched the tribute spoken years earlier by the outlaw Cherokee Bob. As Cherokee Bob lay dying from a wound Robbins had inflicted, he remarked that the marshal never sidestepped after firing, but always charged forward through the smoke, continuing to shoot as he advanced on his opponent. Like the Earp brothers, Hickok and Masterson, Robbins was revered as an Old West icon, representing the bravery and respect that all Americans cherish in the land of the free and the home of the brave.